She walked into the guitar shop alone, and the salesman told her she probably could not afford what she was looking at. She left with more than he made in a month, and the 4 seconds it took him to form that opinion cost him the single largest sale in the history of that store. It was a Wednesday afternoon in the spring of 1968 on Haight Street in San Francisco. The Cheap Thrills album had not yet been released. Big Brother and the holding company had been signed to Columbia Records for several months. Janis Joplin was, by any reasonable measure, about to become one of the most recognizable musicians in America. But on that Wednesday afternoon, walking into a guitar and instrument shop on Haight Street in the early afternoon light, she was simply a woman with wild, curly hair and round glasses and a loose, floral top, and no entourage, and no announcement, and no indication whatsoever that she was anything other than what she appeared to be: a young woman browsing instruments on a weekday afternoon. The salesman on the floor that day was a man named Gary. Gary had been working in music retail for 9 years. He knew his inventory, and he knew his customers. And he had developed, over nearly a decade of reading people who walked through the door, a reliable system for determining quickly which customers were serious and which were not. The system was not complicated. It ran on appearance, on presentation, on the small signals that people who have money tend to send without knowing they are sending them. Gary ran his system on Janis in approximately 4 seconds. Wild hair, round glasses, no makeup, no jewelry worth noting, a top that suggested a preference for comfort over impression. She moved through the door without the quality of someone who expected to be noticed. Gary's system produced its conclusion, and he adjusted his approach accordingly. He walked over, introduced himself, asked if she was looking for anything in particular. She said she wanted to look at guitars. He showed her around. There is a comment that someone left under a Janis Joplin video not long ago. It had been liked over 300 times when it was written, and has been agreed with silently by anyone who has read it since. It said, "Janis Joplin walked into a San Francisco bar one night in 1967, unassuming, wearing her signature round glasses, wild curls framing her face. She had no grand entrance. No one recognized her at first. Then she stepped onto the stage, grabbed the microphone, and as soon as her voice hit the air, the entire room changed." That is the Janis Joplin that Gary did not know he was dealing with on that Wednesday afternoon. The one who walked into rooms without announcement and changed them anyway. The one whose power had nothing to do with how she looked when she walked through a door, and everything to do with what happened when she opened her mouth. Gary did not know this yet. He was still running his system, and his system was steering him toward the wrong conclusion. He showed her the mid-range section first, not the cheapest instruments in the store. He was not impolite about it, but not the serious section either. The section where the guitars were good enough for someone who played on weekends, good enough for someone who was learning, good enough for someone whose budget was the kind of budget that a young woman in a floral top on a Wednesday afternoon in 1968 probably had. He talked about the instruments with a particular tone of professional helpfulness that is deployed when someone has already been placed in a category and is being served accordingly. Warm enough to be pleasant, efficient enough to communicate that the serious section of the store was not where they were headed. Janis listened to his presentation. She looked at the instruments he showed her. She picked one up and held it in the particular way that people who actually play hold instruments, not testing it, inhabiting it, getting the weight and the balance and the feel of the thing in her hands. Then she set it back down, and she asked him to show her the rest of the store. Gary paused. He said something about the rest of the store being quite a bit more expensive. He said it in the tone of a man who is trying to be helpful by managing expectations, the tone of someone who has decided, from the available evidence, that he is doing this person a favor by not wasting their time looking at things they cannot realistically purchase. Janis looked at him for a moment. There is something that people who knew Janis Joplin describe repeatedly when they talk about her in ordinary situations, in rooms that were not stages, in conversations that were not performances. They describe a quality of attention that was unusually direct. She looked at people in a way that felt like she was actually looking at them, rather than at the version of themselves they were presenting. It was not aggressive. It was simply very present. And when she turned that attention on Gary in the guitar shop on Haight Street, he said later that he had a brief and inexplicable sense that he had miscalculated something. He showed her the rest of the store. She moved through it slowly, the same unhurried pace she had walked in with. She stopped at guitars and held them the way she had held the first one, not testing, inhabiting. She asked specific questions about particular instruments, not the questions of someone who was browsing or performing interest, the questions of someone who knew enough to ask the right things and was genuinely interested in the answers. Gary began adjusting his assessment upward, slowly, the way assessments adjust when the evidence keeps contradicting the conclusion. She moved through the vintage section. She spent time with a particular guitar, a vintage acoustic that was one of the more significant pieces in the store, the kind of instrument that serious collectors and serious players knew about, and that the general browsing public walked past without registering. She did not walk past it. She stopped. She picked it up. She played a few notes, and something happened in her face that Gary recognized, belatedly, as the expression of someone who has found the thing they were looking for. She bought the vintage acoustic. Then she pointed at two more guitars she had noticed during her walk through the store. Then she asked about the amplifier configuration in the back that she had noticed on her way in, and that Gary had not offered to show her because the people who bought that kind of amplification were not typically women who walked in alone on Wednesday afternoons without appointments. She bought the amplifier. Then she spent 20 minutes in the accessories section, picks, straps, cases, the particular strings she preferred on the acoustic, and added those to the pile. She asked Gary to add it up. Gary added it up. The number was significant. The number was considerably larger than anything Gary's 4-second system had predicted when she walked through the door. She paid without discussion. She paid without negotiation. She paid the way people pay when the number is not the primary consideration, when the thing they want is the primary consideration, and the number is simply what you hand over in exchange for the thing. She arranged for delivery. She shook Gary's hand. She walked out. Gary stood at the counter for a moment after she left. He was going over the afternoon in his mind the way you go over afternoons that have not gone the way your system predicted they would go. The other salesman who had been in the back of the store asked him how it went. Gary said it went well. He said the name of the customer. The other salesman looked at him. He said, "That was Janis Joplin." Gary said he knew that. He did not know that. He had not known it when she walked in, and he had not known it during the 45 minutes they had spent in the store together, and he was not entirely sure, standing at the counter after she left, that he had known it before the other salesman said the name. The Cheap Thrills album came out that summer. It went to #1. Gary saw the face on the cover and recognized the round glasses and the wild curly hair and the complete absence of any grand entrance. He said later that he had always known something was different about her when she walked in. He said it with the conviction of a man who had not known anything of the sort, but who had had enough time since then to rewrite the afternoon into a version that felt more like the one he wished he had lived. There is something that the people who loved Janis Joplin's music understand intuitively, and that people who have not yet discovered her are sometimes surprised by. She did not look like what she sounded like. This was not an accident, and it was not a limitation. It was, in a specific way, the point. Someone wrote about it in a comment under one of her videos. They said, "There is nothing pretty about her. Her voice is all over the place, not traditional. She is not flashy. She is not a pop star or anything like that. But when you listen to her, you will feel pain. You will feel exposed. You will relive any trauma you might have faced. You will be amazed how one person can transmit so much pain and raw emotion into your heart." This is the gap between what people saw when Janis walked into a room and what they experienced when she opened her mouth. The gap was not a mistake. It was the whole thing. The surprise was the mechanism. The underestimation was the setup for what came next. Someone else said it more simply. We had a real diamond in the rough with Janis. Diamond in the rough. The rough being the part that systems like Gary's assessed and categorized and redirected toward the cheaper section of the store. The diamond being the part that bought the vintage acoustic and the amplifier and paid without negotiation and walked out without looking back. The guitars she bought that day did not stay with her. This was typical of Janis's relationship with things she purchased. She bought generously, and she gave generously, and the distance between those two actions was often very short. The vintage acoustic went to a musician she knew who had been playing on an instrument that was not doing justice to what he could do. She handed it to him at a rehearsal, told him it suited him better than it suited her, and moved on before he could find the words to respond adequately. One of the other guitars went to a woman she had met briefly at a party who had mentioned, in passing, that she was trying to learn and could not afford anything decent. Janis had been at the party for less than an hour. She had the guitar delivered the following week. No note, no explanation, just the guitar, delivered to the address she had asked for before she left the party. This was how Janis moved through the world with money when she had it. Not as a display, not as a statement, as a tool for getting things to the people who needed them, as a mechanism for paying attention to what people wanted, and then quietly making it happen. The way she paid attention to things that other people did not know she was paying attention to. Gary continued working at the guitar shop on Haight Street for several more years. He became, by accounts from people who knew him, more careful about his 4-second assessments after that Wednesday afternoon. Not because he developed a philosophical position about the nature of judgment, but because the story of the woman he had almost redirected toward the mid-range section had a way of coming back to him. The face on the Cheap Thrills album, the face on the magazine covers that appeared over the following years, the same round glasses and wild curly hair and complete absence of grand entrance that had walked through his door on a Wednesday afternoon and that his 9-year system had processed and filed in the wrong place. He told the story to other salespeople. He told it as a cautionary tale. He told it with the mix of rueful honesty and retrospective humor that people bring to stories about mistakes they cannot change, but have at least learned something from. Sometimes the most expensive mistake a person can make, he would say, is deciding in 4 seconds that you already know what you are looking at. Because sometimes what you are looking at is Janis Joplin. And Janis Joplin never looked like Janis Joplin until she did. And by then it was too late to correct the assessment. The only thing you could do was stand at the counter after she left and add up what the 4 seconds had cost you, and understand, in the specific and irreversible way of lessons that arrive too late to be useful, what a diamond in the rough actually means. It means the rough comes first. It means the people who see only the rough miss the diamond entirely. And it means that the diamond does not require anyone to see it in order to be exactly what it is. Janis Joplin walked out of that guitar shop on Haight Street with more instruments than she could carry. She walked the way she always walked, without announcement, without looking back. The way a person walks when they have always known what they were worth and have simply stopped waiting for other people to figure it out.